What's up, everyone? Connor O'Hanlon here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. Today, we are going to be diving into more of a grander narrative of an episode rather than like recent events and current news. I wouldn't say any time that we're living in right now is exactly slow or no news, but for a normal average week since I'd probably say 2015, this is a relatively low and slower news week. So I think it's time to take a look at some of these grander narratives. Of course, we will sprinkle in clips and whatnot from this week that are relevant to the grander narrative. And that narrative that we're explaining today and taking a look at is, what does it mean to be working class? What is the working class? I might interchange that with middle class. All of it is to say that working class is not exactly the way that mainstream media defines it, or like people actually will look at it in the dictionary and see that there's two definitions, one of which is the one that we're going to run with, and the other one is the one that is the misconception about what it means to be working class. The second part of the show is something that is important to me. It's highlighting and remembering and looking at clips of speeches from Fred Hampton, who was the chairman of the Black Panther Party back in the 1960s. And we will get to why that's so important, but his birthday was yesterday. So again, on a day like today, where it's not super imperative to focus on like one political story for the week, I think it's important to look back at our history as why I have the Greater Society podcast label. The Great Society was around the same time as the racial movement and the civil rights in the 1960s, in the fight for civil rights, specifically for African Americans. So basically highlighting an overlooked icon of the time that has been functionally erased from the collective understanding of that time period. So that is why we will explore that. I will have clips from his speeches from back in the day, because I think it is very, very vital to understand what he was saying and why it was controversial at the time, why it would probably still be controversial today, and what we can learn from it. So with all that being said, before we get started rolling into today's topics, if you were watching on YouTube, please feel free to hit us up in the chat with questions, comments, anything you would like, and hit the subscribe button and the bell button to get notifications when we go live. We are trying to break that first 100 subscribers. I know that's not a lot, but we need to finally break that 100 subscriber mark. And yes, I do have two guitars behind me, because slowly but surely I will be getting way nicer background as I fix up this room. But for today, it's going to be two guitars. So with that being said, let us dive into the first big chunk of what I want to talk about today, and that is the real definition of working class. So, if we take the dictionary definition, as I will pull up here, the dictionary definition of working class means of, relating to, derived from, or suitable to the class of wage earners. However, as a noun, and this is wrong. Now, of course, that's my opinion. This is a dictionary definition. However, what I'm talking about is why we must redefine and take back this definition. The second definition here as a noun is the class of people who work for wages, usually as manual labor. And let's dissect why I am talking about it being not just manual labor, and why the first definition, specifically the adjective of being of working class, is more fitting than the colloquial term. So, working class is anybody that works or functionally sells their labor in the capitalist system to make money. Basically, if you have to sell your labor to put food on the table, you are working class. Now, you can be, and this is my extrapolation of what I think as somebody that is a working class person, and I believe that most people would agree with this, but you can be a small business owner, technically a capitalist, and still be working class because you work in the business you own, thus earning your wage in your business. The flip side is, of course, the upper class, or as we will talk about with the analyzing that Fred Hampton does. And if you just know anything, and again, the interesting interplay of all this is that my analysis comes from it as a social democrat. A lot of the terms and phrases I will be using will be almost pulled directly from a critique of capitalism, or you can look at it from a Marxist perspective or even socialist perspective. There are differences. I'm using the terms in these phrases specifically to highlight classes as they're defined. Of course, everyone likes to take things out of context. I am not I am not a socialist, but of course that is the way that people want to frame these things. It is important to note that you can be a social democrat, critique capitalism, critique forms of socialism, maybe you want to mend them together to form some sort of hybrid, some sort of new economic system. Again, this is something down the line, but I point this out because throughout this episode, you will hear words like bourgeoisie and you will hear words like proletariat, which are inherently, terms that were used by Marxist critiques. And again, just because if you use Marxist critiques doesn't make you a communist or an anarcho, whatever you want to call it, right? It's just important to know, okay? So there's Eric says, "Coward, be bold." Unfortunately, this is me being bold. So I'm not a. That's the thing, is I'm not a socialist, right? So, but again, I think there's value in looking at things through a lens that is critical of capitalism and maybe proposing something that may end up better. So when we draw that line, right, we look at working class. There is what would be the proletariat, defined by the people that we will hear from today, the person I should say. And there is the bourgeoisie, the owner class, the capitalists, and not as in like I define as a capitalist, I like capitalism, but a literal capitalist, meaning owning the means of production. Bourgeoisie can be somebody that doesn't necessarily work for their earnings. So somebody that might make all of their money from maybe a trust fund, might make money from just capital gains, being a landlord, etc. This is where the interplay of and I'll have a clip of Ted Cruz here in a second. The interplay of the working class is not somebody that is just wearing a hard hat. The working class is somebody that sells their labor to a business for its value, where they get paid in wages. That includes people in the factory, that includes people in the farms, that includes people in the coffee shop. And I bring this up because I saw, again, this is a meme, but I saw a picture, and this is actually, I think, in response to Ted Cruz, so we will get to the clip here in a second. It was a picture of, the Chad meme with, a construction worker, someone in a factory, someone in a farm, and a barista at Starbucks. Every single one of those people is working class. Every single person that spends their day selling their labor is working class. And it is vital that we begin, and I won't get too far ahead of myself before I be listening to this clip, but it is vital that we analyze the politics of today, the politics of the past, and the politics of the future through an intersectional and class-based lens. Why I say both of those together. If you look back in the history of this country, as we will when we listen to Fred, we have been divided on issues of race, religion, and we continue to be so. And many, many more issues that are social, socioeconomic, but less economic. Things that divide us over the small, minute differences of culture, rather than uniting us around the things that we have in common. And again, this is where the crux of this all comes from. A progressive movement is always going to fight for the ideals of the pursuit of happiness, which entails the freedoms and the rights of owning your own home, if you so choose, having healthcare without question, having a sustainable and habitable planet, having a sustaining and fulfilling, good-paying job. All of these are entangled with the intersectional class solidarity, but without the class solidarity, we're going to be divided amongst ourselves based on race, religion, culture, etc., gender. Historically, the powers that be, whatever you want to define them as, have divided us by these lines, which have kept us separate and has made the white working class hate the black working class, or the black working class hate the white working class, or the white working class hate the immigrant working class, where all of those communities have so much more in common with each other than the people that are trying to divide, and the people that don't have to get up every morning and go to work, and the people that don't have to struggle and pay paycheck to paycheck to put a roof over their head, and work paycheck to paycheck to put bread on the table. We have so much more in common, and that is the crux of this entire movement and this entire podcast and this entire company and my entire message. Which is why I wanted to take the step back, take the grander narrative. What does it mean to be working class? Now, Ted Cruz has some opinions on that. So Ted Cruz here, on his wonderful podcast, he's hanging out with Daily Wire host Matt Walsh. And he, of course, Ted Cruz, big working class guy, definitely wasn't just a Harvard educated guy that got everything handed to him in his career. Definitely working class. He's going to tell you, the Starbucks barista, that you don't deserve to have your student loan debt canceled. And this all connects. This is all going to connect into the next bit with Ronald Reagan's administration, and all these terms will keep continuing to arise. So listen to what Ted Cruz thinks of you if you are a barista and you had your student loan debt forgiven.
That there is a real risk if you are that slacker barista who wasted 7 years in college studying completely useless things, now has loans and can't get a job. Joe Biden just gave you $20,000. Like, holy cow, 20 grand. That, maybe you weren't going to vote in November and suddenly you just got 20 grand. And, if you can, get off the bong for a minute and head down to the voting station or just send in your mail-in ballot that the Democrats have helpfully sent you, it could drive up turnout, particularly among young people. That there is a real risk.
So he kind of gives up the whole game there. And let's analyze it. He thinks, and we'll take the barista part first. Ted Cruz thinks if you're a barista, you don't deserve to make a living wage. Ted Cruz thinks that if you're a barista, you do not deserve to have a union represent you, which the union way of life is what has provided working class people a steady job, a steady income, a steady retirement, a steady access to health care throughout the entire history of this country. Ted Cruz doesn't think that you deserve that. Ted Cruz thinks that if you are a barista at Starbucks, you must have wasted time in college. You must have wasted 7 years in college in which you were just accumulating debt this whole time because you just wanted to have debt. You didn't want to have educational opportunities to go to school and become a teacher or become a lawyer like he did. You didn't want to go to school to go become a doctor. No, you just wanted to go to school to get debt, slack around, and as he put it, hit the bong. How out of touch can one man be? How out of touch can this guy be? This guy wants to take pictures of himself in cowboy boots riding a tractor. And he is telling you, if you're a barista, you must have wasted your time in college. You must have wasted 7 years' time. You just accumulated $20,000, $30,000 a year, $40,000 a year in student loan debt without getting a degree potentially, or even if you did get a degree, you might still be working as a barista. Because guess what? The senator from Texas doesn't understand that the economy of this country has been busted. The senator from Texas doesn't think that you deserve to have an education and you don't deserve to get a good paying job when you get out of college, whether you get a degree or not. And when there is unprecedented student loan forgiveness, and again, I think that the whole thing should have been forgiven, but when you have unprecedented student loan forgiveness, one of the greatest hand ups, not hand out, a hand up to the working class people of this country. Yes, because the average person that has student loan debt is working class. When that happens, the senator from Texas who voted for the trillions and trillions in dollars of tax cut in 2017, who didn't give a shit about the hole in the deficit that he was blowing because his donors and his friends on Wall Street and the big corporate donors get their tax cuts. He didn't give a shit. But because you and the other people in the working class may get $10,000, oh, if you got a Pell Grant, you might get $20,000 in student loan forgiveness. That's a big deal to him. That is his whole argument. And he thinks, and this is actually a different issue, but might as well highlight it while we're here. This guy has the gall to say giving something materially beneficial to the working class people of this country will increase Democratic turnout, and that's a bad thing. He thinks you don't deserve to vote. That is what he's saying. If you are a barista at Starbucks making maybe $17 an hour, maybe less, depends if you have a union, maybe not, he doesn't think that you even deserve to have your voice heard. And you might say that might be a stretch, Connor. That might be, one jump too far, but it's not. He doesn't want you to vote. He doesn't want working class people that struggle to put food on the table to vote, because he knows that he loses when more people vote. Now, he's in Texas, but if he was in Pennsylvania, if he was in any state where it would be a little bit easier to knock him off, and he's not up for re-election this year, but in any other state, this guy wouldn't get away with this crap. But he's saying the quiet part out loud. And we can kind of thank him for that, because it at least provides us with a better and clearer lens of where this is coming from. Again, we will go back to the framing of the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, because in this continuation of analyzing what it means to be working class, this is from The Intercept last week. I didn't get to it last week on the show. I think it came out the day of last week's show. The origin of student debt, and this, I will link this in the bio. The origin of student debt, Reagan advisor warned free college would create a dangerous, quote, educated proletariat. And I'm going to see if I can pull up this specific quote here. It says, "We're in danger of producing an educated proletariat. That's dynamite. We have to be selective on who we allow to go through higher education. If not, we will have a large number of highly trained and unemployed people." At the time that this was being proposed, when they were trying to increase the price of colleges, they were trying to stifle the education of the average person by increasing the costs. Rather than embracing an educated populace, the right-wing agenda of the Reagan administration, and again, this is why we have to analyze and know our history, because it doesn't just come from the Trump administration, it goes back in our history. Knowing that it goes from Reagan to Bush to Trump and to whatever comes next, and there's a lot to fill in this, like, that's the big stones. You have a lot of sand to fill in the gaps there. They are afraid of an educated proletariat, an educated populace that will fight back and understand that you have the power to educate yourself. You have the power to become educated and fight back collectively as a class. Not a class of solely white or black or immigrant or native. As the working class collectively saying, we deserve better. We deserve better. That is what this country was founded on. American society is baked into the foundation of what America is supposed to be. We're supposed to do better as generations come on, not be crippled by debt and just layers and layers of debt. Because what Ted Cruz and what Ronald Reagan and all these people they don't give a shit that even $10,000 in student loan forgiveness still leaves nearly 25 million people in student loan debt. And that for years to come, we will see student loan debt piling back up. And we have seen that they have designed the system that student loan debt, the way that people in the working class might be able to reach the upper middle class, might be able to go from low class to middle class, the way that somebody could work themselves from poverty, from rags to riches. That is how you do it. You do it through education and hard work, but they don't want it to be accessible to everybody. They never did. Education was not supposed to be an elitist concept, but they have made it that. They want you to think that, oh, going to college is an elitist thing. They want to pin the blue collar worker and the white collar worker against each other. In fact, I had a conversation with a good friend of mine yesterday, and I won't say his name just out of being nice to him, because he probably doesn't want me to talk about him necessarily. But he's a blue collar guy. He's not in a union. He deserves to have a union. So please, if you know who I am talking about, fucking form a union for yourself. We had a conversation about how my neighbors, and again, I won't use names because don't need to, but my friends and neighbors can now afford to get their sewer system fixed. That will cost them $12,000 because they had student loan debt forgiven. And the person that's going to get hired is the plumber that went to trade school. The person that's going to get hired to fix somebody's housing electricity because now they have some money to fix something in their house. The person that is going to be able to get hired because they're going to be laying hardwood floor like I just did last week, but I did it myself. But you know what I'm saying? A contractor that is going to get paid because of somebody being able to afford a house. The real estate agent now, that is somebody's going to be able to afford the house because of this student loan forgiveness. And this is not an episode about student loan forgiveness, but it is intrinsically tied because education is tied to working class people. Access to K through 12 used to be a radical idea. Access to free K through 12 used to be a radical idea. Access to universal pre-K, which has now become a reality in certain spots and will continue to grow in popularity as more and more people see it as an alternative, is providing people a better alternative for their education, providing people more opportunity to start businesses. Because if you're working class, you work a job day in, day out, you need to have the opportunity to put your kids in a preschool when they're young for you to go to work, potentially working nights, grinding on that side hustle until that side hustle can become your main income. That is how working class people become what they want to become. They want to become business owners. They want to become homeowners. They want to become the American dream. That is what this is all about. Working hard is ingrained in American culture. That's fine. But working hard has to come with the reward that it's always said it has. The economic mobility in this country has gone down, actually never really existed, but it has gone down the drains even worse. You're more likely to just end up where you started. Now, that might be nice for the person that's in the upper class, but for somebody that is lower class and they want to work their way up, they want to make it. They want to be the personification of the American dream. It is much harder now that you have to, and it's not impossible. That is the straw man. People will say, oh, you're saying it's impossible? No, it is not impossible, but it should be achievable by more people than it is right now. Not because of some idealistic, we just want everyone to be equal. No, we want everyone to have equal opportunity, and we want people to be able to chase after the founding principles of this country. And that is what this progressive movement, intersectional progressive movement, is key to do. We cannot continue to fight and quarrel over, the pay gap between men and women. How about we try to fix this and then move forward together? Why quarrel over, this company is hiring immigrants here instead of hiring people that were born in New Jersey or Pennsylvania or in Massachusetts? Why not say these people are here, whether that be the immigrant, that be the person that's on your block, whether that be that person across the country. These people are here in this country. trying to build a better life for themselves. That is what it means to be working class. To build whatever, I guess for a lack of a better word, family dynasty that you will be able to achieve through your blood, sweat, and tears collectively. Sometimes it's not going to the factory. Sometimes the strain is not the same necessarily as sitting in an office as it is climbing skyscrapers and cleaning the windows. But both people deserve to have the opportunity to provide for themselves, their families, and ultimately their children, their grandchildren, generations to come, building towards something greater. Because once the basic needs of the working class are put together, that is when the power dynamics change. That is when we can look up rather than look aside. That is what the whole... If you didn't see the movie Don't Look Up, that is the exact point of that movie. It is, it's literally talking about climate change in that movie, but it is also an intersectional movie looking at class and saying a lot of people would rather look to either side of themselves and blame people next door rather than blaming the systems that have held people, that have oppressed people, or just not provided equal opportunity to people. And they would rather divide on those things than unite and fight together. Now, we're 30-something minutes into this, and I am going to bring us over into the second piece here. And I'm pulling up full screen videos here. And I want to give a background before I show these videos because I'm going to show them uninterrupted. These videos, I think in total, will probably be about 7 or 8 minutes. I will talk about each one after. So I will talk about after this first one. I will jump to that. But this is very... We're talking about Chairman Fred Hampton of the Black Panther Party of Chicago. I find it very, very important to highlight certain aspects of this story before we jump into what he was talking about. And that is that Fred Hampton in these videos, I believe, is 20 or 21 years old. And if you've listened to previous iterations of my show, I think I did it in February of 2020, maybe 2021. I talked about the three leaders, specifically MLK, Malcolm X, and Fred Hampton. But for those who don't know, have not heard me go over this, and I've never done clips like this before on here. Barely any clips like this before, historical clips that are important to the context of what we're talking about. But I think listening to uninterrupted, unclipped, like full-fledged, here's like a 5-minute speech, contextualizes much more than like one quote will. And it's somebody like Fred Hampton who has been overlooked, I would say, in history as a revolutionary leader. And I don't mean revolution like we're going to storm the Capitol or revolution. I mean like in a political revolution sense. And this is where this rhetoric over time has been co-opted and coerced and manipulated into this weird coagulation of right-wing spewing nonsense. But Fred Hampton in Chicago started the Black Panther breakfast program, which provided free breakfast to kids throughout Chicago, and it would provide educational opportunities and babysitting opportunities and all this stuff, and it provided a sense of community to people that didn't otherwise have it. It wasn't necessarily a religious organization. Again, why this secular, intersectional, it provided opportunities for women. And again, I will state that with the asterisk of it was the 1960s, so of course it's not exactly to the standards of equality that we would hold it to today. And of course, the Black Panther Party of today is different than the Black Panther Party of then. This is the type of nuance we need to bring to these stories and these historical figures, and noting that, like, things change, labels change, ideologies change. But Fred Hampton was somebody that the FBI and the government found so dangerous. And I don't mean dangerous as in like a violent criminal. They found his words and his ideology and his inspiration to others so dangerous that they killed him in his sleep. And I'm not exaggerating. I am not hyperbolic. While I show you this clip, I will bring you the book and I will show you it. Fred Hampton's murder by the FBI was literally proven in the court of law in the United States. A functional lynching at the age of 21 years old. Now, I will give you the full story after we listen to this stuff, but these are important things to note. I get chills listening to this. I'm just going to show you full screen. You don't need to see me and my reaction because I'm just going to let it run for a couple minutes. So please, questions, anything like that you have, you could feel free to throw them in the chat or leave a comment if you're watching this post, or you just shoot me a DM. If you like this historical look at some of these figures, I would gladly go back and pull more clips of other figures as we move on, and we have these episodes where it's less like craziness each week. So with all that being said, here is Fred Hampton on revolution and racism.
I'm the deputy chairman of the state of Illinois Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton. And a lot of people don't understand the Black Panther Party's relationship with white mother country radicals. A lot of people don't even understand that word that Eric uses a lot. But what we're saying is that there are white people in the mother country that are for the same types of things that we are for stimulating revolution in the mother country. And we said that we'll work with anybody that has revolution on their mind. We're not a racist organization because we understand that racism is used against you. And we know that racism is just a byproduct. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people. And we're going to have to put it back in the hands of the people. Everybody in the state of Illinois is going to have to be involved or even around the revolution, because we're going to have one. We're going to have to do more than talk. We're going to have to do more than listen. We're going to even have to do more than learn. We're going to have to start practicing, and that's very hard. We're going to have to start learning, and you learn through practice. We got to start making mistakes, and you learn through making mistakes. We got to start getting out there with the people. And a lot of times we think we're better than the people, but that's an insult and that's criminal. Think you're better than the people. But we got to get together and learn where it's at. It's going to take a lot of hard work. Education for children is something else. You ought to dig on it. Every sister in this audience. Every sister in this audience ought to get themselves together and come on down and help us with that Breakfast for Children program. You ought to come down and help feed them children in the morning. We have Breakfast for Children because we teach the people through practice, through observation and participation, that people can be fed free. That's the people's thing. Socialism is the people. You're afraid of yourself. If you're afraid of socialism, you're afraid of yourself. We know they have our pictures, we know they're looking for us, we know they want us, but we're still saying that even though we could be in a sense, as far as this system goes, on the mountaintop, We in the Black Panther Party, because of our dedication and understanding what's in the valley, knowing that the people in the valley, knowing that we originally came from the valley, knowing that our flag is the same flag as the people in the valley, knowing that our enemy is on the mountaintop, our friends are in the valley. We say, even though it's nice to be on the mountaintop, we're going back to the valley. I be in the office every day. I be in the streets propagandizing every day. I be working with everybody every day. I be teaching that solidarity is the thing. The end of a complete wipeout of imperialism is the thing. So if you're going to be thinking about me, that's what Bobby would be teaching. If you're going to be thinking about us, all we say is ain't no thing about going nowhere, getting killed. All we want to know is that you're doing what we'd be doing if we were here. And you got to do that. You can't do it unless you believe that you can do it. In the spirit of liberation, we understand that they want everybody in the party in jail. And we know that if we try to figure out and separate and divide who should go and who shouldn't go, we spend more time doing that than working for the people. So the quick solution, the speedy one, nobody goes. Nobody goes. We all stay right here. With the people. Because we love the people. Okay, you can put your hands down now. We say all power to all people. We say white power to white people. Brown power to brown people. Yellow power to yellow people. Black power to black people. X power to those that we left out. We say Panther power to the Vanguard Party. When you leave here saying the last word, before you go to bed tonight, say I am a revolutionary. Make that the last word. In case you don't wake up, then somebody might believe it and you might, end up in what they call a revolutionary happy hunting grounds. Say that. I am a revolutionary. Say it when you're going out. Everybody want to keep listening. Okay, we're going to say it while we're going out. Hey, we're going to start a thing called Free Fred. Don't that sound nice? Hey, let's do that. Free Fred. Free Fred. Free Fred. Free Fred. Hey, I ain't even in jail yet.
So that is clip number 1. Quick analysis of it before we go into number 2. And again, I don't know if people really like this stuff. I really find this very enlightening and very important to look at historically. I find it that if you don't wake up, so exactly, like this is the type of thing that is hard to like put into words, right? Fred Hampton knew that on some level he was risking his life putting his certain ideology out there. A lot of the stuff that happens around this time is around the time of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. That clip right there is right before he's going to jail on trumped up charges. And again, here's the book. I went and got it while I was playing the clip. The Assassination of Fred Hampton. This book is written by Jeffrey Haas. You can see the author right here. He was the lawyer that represented the Hampton estate, which again, the Hampton estate wasn't like an estate worth like millions of dollars. It was just his family. And important to note, and I think it might be in here, in pictures here, is in the beginning here, you could see Fred's family, and Fred's mother, if you know your history, was the babysitter for Emmett Till. So when we talk about history, Fred Hampton would be in his 70s if he was alive today. We're not talking about ancient history here. We're talking about somebody that has these ideas that are, you heard him say it, you know, white, black, brown, whatever, and X power to whoever we left out. That is the type of movement that is intersectional, is groundbreaking in its utility in coordinating and uniting people. And that can be scary to some people, but it's very liberating and inspiring to me. And the comment that he says at the end, you might not wait, you don't know that you're going to wake up tomorrow, but you go to bed saying, I am a revolutionary. And in another quote, it's not in the videos that I have today, but he says, I am a revolutionary. You can't kill the revolutionary. Or sorry, you can kill the revolutionary, but you cannot kill the revolution. And again, this is about movements, movement building, long-term working class politics that will build us towards a brighter tomorrow. So I will jump to this second clip here because this one might, the audio, remember, these are from the 60s, so the audio of these is not great, so I apologize from that. But this is another clip while Fred is on trial, and this is him giving a speech in the courtroom. So let's take a look at this.
And he said already what he thought about people that had different political beliefs than he has. His speeches sound somewhat like those of Hitler, and we know why he wants to see Fred Hampton put in jail. Why do I have a lot of arrests? Because of harassment. Why is that harassment? Because the people that harass me have set up a problem that made me disagree with them violently, and they set up this problem in order to exploit me and other people like me. And why they want to get rid of me? Because I'm saying something that might wake up some other exploited people and some other oppressed people. And if all these people ever get together, then these pigs that are exploiting us, we'll be able to run them into the lake. That's why they want to get rid of us. And it's just, it's sort of like a primary thing with me. I'm the first move that they'll make. I'm a part of the organization. It will be the first organization they'll move on because I happen to be a part of the organization, the Black Panther Party. That is the only organization, in fact, that has came out and stood up loud and clear and said that we don't care what anybody says, whether they have guns or not and badges or 18 uniforms. If whenever they step outside the bounds of legality into the bounds of illegality, then we'll blow their brains out if they're bothering the people. And what makes them mad about that? They're constantly bothering the people. Anybody that's out there for the protection of the people happens to be in direct conflict with them. What makes them mad about it? What makes them mad about it is that they have black people and white poor people and red poor people and Puerto Rican poor people and Latin American Puerto Rican people of poor people of all descents. They had them caught up in movements based on racism when the Black Panther Party stood up and said that we don't care what anybody says. We don't think you fight fire with fire best. We think you fight fire with water best. We're going to fight racism, not with racism, but we're going to fight with solidarity. We said we're not going to fight capitalism with black capitalism, but we're going to fight it with socialism. We stood up and said we're not going to fight reactionary pigs and reactionary state's attorneys like this and reactionary state's attorneys like Hanrahan with any other reactions on our part. We're going to fight their reactions where all of us people are getting together and have an international proletarian revolution.
Right on. Right on.
Amongst each other. And you've heard the testimony of pigs here. You got pigs of all colors, you know that. You got pigs that are white, you got pigs that are black, you even got pigs that are black and white. Propagating the same type of madness that this buffoon Hanrahan would be propagating if he were here himself. And why? Because they want to keep you to believing that I'm your enemy and that everybody else that's black and that wears a lot of hair on his head and hair on his face. They want to keep you thinking that he's your enemy. Why? Because if ever you would disregard him and overlook him just for a minute and throw away that question of racism and start into dealing with a little logic, then there would be no one else you could attack other than Hanrahan, other than Daley, and other than Tricky Dicky Nixon. If you make the right decision, then the oppressed people of the world get complete satisfaction. I know you return a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
So that was him on trial, Fred Hampton on trial, pleading his case against trumped up charges. And why do I say that they're trumped up charges? Because in this book, again, you can find it in this book right here, or just Googling it or whatnot, but you can find it. And if you care about the history of civil rights in this country, you need to read this book. It, yes, at times is a little bit dry, talking about legalese and all that stuff, but it is illustrative of what actually happened to this man, to this movement, when they took him out. They put Fred Hampton in jail on trumped up charges. And this was all a part of a grander narrative and a grander program called COINTELPRO, Counterintelligence Program. This COINTELPRO, how do we know about it? How do you, Connor, oh, that sounds made up. You don't know about this. They went after radical groups in the 1960s and 1950s. And of course, later on went after some of the radical right-wing groups to maybe make up for it. And then it was discontinued after the 70s, where the most radical and frankly, and I don't mean radical in a bad way in talking about these black leaders. I'm talking about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and Fred Hampton. All of them are dead by the year 1970 or 71. Then the program is ended. So if you look at the FOIA information, Freedom of Information Act information regarding the FBI's COINTELPRO, you can find, and that I am not making this up, I'll actually keep myself on screen here. You can find that this is not made up in any sense of the word, because COINTELPRO, the FBI began COINTELPRO, short for Counterintelligence Program, in 1956 to disrupt the activities of the Communist Party of the United States. In the 1960s, it was expanded to include a number of other domestic groups such as the Ku Klux Klan, the Socialist Workers' Parties, and the Black Panther Party. All COINTELPRO operations were ended in 1971. Although limited in scope, about 0.2% of the FBI's workload over a 15-year period, COINTELPRO was later rightfully criticized by Congress and the American people for abridging First Amendment rights and for other reasons. And of course, those other reasons, as I go to the wrong thing, those other reasons are this. Fred Hampton was assassinated in his bed upon his return from jail. Fred Hampton had an FBI informant working with COINTELPRO, which was run by J. Edgar Hoover, the Attorney General of the United States at the time, under Richard Nixon, with the coordination of Hanrahan, which is the guy that he talks about in that video, the District Attorney of Chicago, which in the movie Judas and the Black Messiah is never mentioned, which is the biggest criticism of that movie that I have. In this book, the whole prosecution is about prosecuting Hanrahan, the district attorney, who operated and executed the FBI raid of the Black Panther Party's house and the drugging and murder of Fred Hampton in his bed. At the age of 21, there is a pretty accurate description of the raid in the movie Judas and the Black Messiah. So if you are looking for a simplified version of this story, a Hollywood version of the story, a great movie, but not the full real story, Judas and the Black Messiah will do. But the actual portrayal of the FBI raid is pretty damn accurate. And I know this because the raid is extremely detailed in this book. And it is analyzed through, because there were lies. This is important. There were lies about the Black Panthers shooting through the door first. Proven. through scientific evidence to be false. Shotguns from the outside from the police were blasted through the door. Drugs were put into the drink of Fred Hampton before he went to bed so that he was unconscious when he was shot in the head multiple times in his bed with his pregnant girlfriend in the room with him. This is history that is not taught, that is absolutely necessary to understand the default for some people in these communities in distrust for government, maybe even jumping to saying the distrust for police, because there are things like this that have existed, and this is why we have to build forward in both community building, in intersectional working class politics, and building the trust back with our institutions, because that comes from both ends. That does not just mean that, we should all just trust the police. That is not the case. But the actual police have to build the community and work with the community that they work in. And in the chat, we have Malcolm X. Malcolm X has been proven that he was assassinated with the help of the FBI, which let's just jump here. So in our next document that we're going to go over here in the COINTELPRO here is this quote. And this quote is of course, and the first time I ever heard it, and as it's actually highlighted here, which I didn't realize in my original looking at this article here. But the original quote is quoted in the song "Wake Up" by Rage Against the Machine. But this is the original document, which is a memo regarding black nationalist groups, and they're labeled as hate groups, but that is not accurate. And I'm going to read the actual document. I will leave the visual here as I pull up the unredacted and full text that is actually easier for me to read rather than reading this over here. But it's for your sake. This is the original document pulled up here. The article, the memo begins with the goals. So I will start with the goals. So this is going to be a couple minutes of me reading, so I apologize, but it will intersperse with me giving my takes on this. But this is important history. For maximum effectiveness of the counterintelligence program, again, also known as COINTELPRO, if I keep repeating that, and to prevent wasted effort, long-range goals are being set. 1. Prevent the coalition of militant black nationalist groups. In unity, there is strength. A truism that is no less valid for all triteness. An effective coalition of black nationalist groups might be the first step towards a real Mau Mau, Black Revolutionary Army, in America. The beginning of a true black revolution. Goal number 2. To prevent the rise of a, quote, black messiah who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement. Malcolm X might have been such a, quote, messiah. He is the martyr of the movement today. Pause. This is not me reading right now. This is right after the death of Malcolm X. So, important to note, one of the, quote, black messiahs that they are talking about that could potentially rise up here has already been, quote, neutralized. As we will get to, you will understand what I'm talking about. Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, and Elijah Muhammad all aspire to this position. Elijah Muhammad is less of a threat because of his age. Elijah Muhammad is the leader of the Nation of Islam at the time. King could be a really very real contender for this position. Should he this is very important. This is the most important piece of the whitewashing of Martin Luther King Jr. and the threat that he posed to the supposed white liberal order. And I mean liberal as in what they're describing here. So remember, this is not liberal in today's lingo. Remember, context matters. King could be a very real contender for this position should he abandon his supposed, quote, obedience to, quote, white liberal doctrines of nonviolence and embrace black nationalism. Carmichael has the necessary charisma to be a real threat in this way. So pause there. That is an extremely telling bit of context right there that should prick up every hair in the back of your neck, thinking of and knowing that the FBI, through the counterintelligence program, sent threats and suicide letters, or letters to Martin Luther King saying that he should commit suicide while he was in jail in Birmingham. This was a directed order from J. Edgar Hoover, the Attorney General of the United States. This is Martin Luther King. This is not some crazy person out in left field, like out of the blue, which it wouldn't be right then. But this is the person that we as Americans hold dear enough to have his own holiday. Somebody that was so, again, revolutionary in their time, radical for their time, that he was assassinated, and these people wanted to have him commit suicide. Sorry, I'm about to sneeze. So, pull up back into goal number 4. To prevent militant black nationalist groups and leaders from gaining respectability by discrediting them to 3 separate segments of the community. The goal of discrediting black nationalists must be handled tacitly in 3 ways. You must discredit those groups and individuals to, first, the responsible Negro community. Second, they must be discredited to the white community, both the responsible community and to, quote, liberals who have vestiges of sympathy for militant black nationalists simply because they are Negroes. Third, these groups must be discredited in the eyes of Negro radicals and followers of the movement. This last area requires entirely different tactics from the first 2. Publicity about violent tendencies and radical statements merely enhances black nationalists to the last group. It adds respectability in a different way. Now, what does that sound like? What does the label, and again, I guess it doesn't have the full number 5 on here, but I have number 5 on here. It is very, very apparent that what they're trying to label here is black people creating the narrative of violence. Now, what does that sound like? What does that remind you of? The stereotype and the racial bigotry that has been slapped on and has continued to grow from this moment, from this time. It actually stems before this time, but has been extrapolated from this to today is absolutely astonishing. It should really drive everybody up a wall, but it's hard to really gripe with this. And 5, we'll just go to the last goal. A final goal should be to prevent the long-range growth of militant black organizations, especially among youth. Specific tactics to prevent these groups from converting young people must be developed. Then there are specific targets lined out. Primary targets of the COINTELPRO program, counterintelligence program, black nationalist hate groups should be the most violent and radical groups and their leaders. We should emphasize those leaders and the organizations that are nationwide in scope and are most capable of disrupting this country. These targets, members, and the followers of multiple. You could just go through. There's a big list, but specifically, there are lists of people, and on the list, specifically listed, Martin Luther King Jr. Now, Fred Hampton is not specifically listed in this, but he is a target of this. And this quote right here is an extrapolation from this memo that says, through counterintelligence, it should be possible to pinpoint potential troublemakers and neutralize them. This is a direct quote from J. Edgar Hoover himself. So when we talk about this history. When we look at the overlooked radical, and I mean radical as in good in this sense, people that were pushing the needle, standing up for working class people, standing up for intersectional rights. The powers that be, meaning the Attorney General of this country, meaning Richard Nixon at the time, because we give that guy a pass way too much, and I mean that genuinely, because Richard Nixon opens the door for Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan, of course, as we've already discussed, leads the door open for George W. Bush and Donald Trump and whatever we're dealing with now, which is this, if not outright fascist, this near fascist Republican Party that has been growing and brewing for decades. This is the type of bigotry that has seeped in over the history of this country. It has been overlooked. Most people don't know who Fred Hampton is. Again, I will emphasize, and for those who didn't, you can go back and listen to what I just showed, the clips. There are other clips of him speaking. I wish, there's some things that I wish that there was more of. This guy was so threatening to the FBI, the Black Panther Party was destabilized in Chicago, was destabilized by his murder. They were so afraid of him that they murdered him in his bed at the age of 21 years old. Now, this is the point of why it's important to note, other than it ties together with what we were talking about in the beginning of the show, with working class, building an intersectional working class political movement moving forward, and that is an inherently progressive movement. People of different colors, races, religions, sexes, genders, cultures. That is one piece of it. The second piece is that we as a society today, we as a progressive movement today, do not have the quote Messiah that they are talking about in this memo. We never did. We probably never will. People look to Bernie Sanders or AOC to be this leader. The way that they cannot stop a long-term working class progressive movement from succeeding is, rather than being a dragon with one head, is that we form this gigantic movement that forms as a hydra, a multi-head, one with, and I'm of course using my love of fantasy here, one with hundreds and thousands of heads, meaning hundreds and thousands of leaders that step up in your local community, organize on the local level, the state level, running for federal office, making change happen. It happens together, not as individuals. We can never rely on one person moving the needle solely. Now, it takes these charismatic leaders like Fred Hampton, like Bernie Sanders, to move the needle. It opens up and creates pathways for people to move forward and create the space for people behind them. But it is incumbent upon people like us to be that nail in that we are building and, slowly cracking at the foundation of what is existing now, so that we can build a new, solid foundation of a progressive working class movement. That is what I have for you today. I genuinely hope that you enjoyed listening to some of these videos. Again, I get that they're old. The audio quality is not 100%, and of course it's from YouTube, so I have these freaking ads and stuff popping up, but yesterday was Fred Hampton's birthday, and he would have been, I think, 76 years old. When we talk about MLK, when we talk about his birthday, I think he would be in his 80s now. We're not talking about like ancient Babylon when we talk about these heroes of American culture. You know, when I talk about FDR, like these are less than 100 years ago. Like our grandparents were alive during this time. I can't emphasize enough that if you are looking for a book suggestion, that you go and read this book, The Assassination of Fred Hampton, Jeffrey Haas. You can find it on probably any library has it. Audiobooks, if you do audiobooks via remember, you can go to Hoopla, I think it is, and you can get audiobooks from your free community library. Or if you have to, you can go to Audible, go to your local bookstore, pick up one of these books, give it a read. Even if it's just to understand the story a little bit better. I get it. Sometimes it's like the specifics are a bit out there, but it's called Hoopla. 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 If you have, I know in Bucks County, the Bucks County library gives you multiple, I think it's like at least five rentals a month of audiobooks. Now, it doesn't have every single book ever existing, but it's something. That's how I've listened to The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. That was a great way to listen to that book. And there's plenty of stuff in it. But, you know, any major bookstore, you could probably get this ordered and you can get it. So support local bookstores, as we always want to do here. And yeah, Cloud Library is also another app that does allow you to do the same thing. There are multiple other ones as well. Different ones have different libraries. Just find this book. You will be better off for reading it. You'll be better off for understanding the fight. And actually, in closing, I should note this. The assassination of Fred Hampton, as proven in this book, was the first successful prosecution of a police outfit against the murder of a civilian. So this is a historical book. Like the Jeffrey Haas, the lawyer that fought so long, it literally took decades to prove the murder of Fred Hampton. So that's when I say it is proven. It is factually proven in the court of law on there. So it says it's only in chat, we got only available as an ebook on Hoopla for the Bucks County Library. That sucks. But we could try to find, I'll try to find a link to an audio book version, and I'll put it in the link if I can find one. But with that being said, take away this message that our history is important. That is why this show is called the Greater Society Podcast. Not only because I want to make a greater society, but because the Great Society is our history. The New Deal is our history. Fred Hampton is our history. These things are not so far away. Reconstruction is our history. The Civil War is our history. We need to learn from these things and take a hold of the good, learn from the bad, move forward and develop as we're doing so, becoming stronger, not dividing. So with all that being said, I really appreciate you guys hanging with me. If you did like those clips, please let me know in the comment section below. And if you missed the clips, if you're watching live, go back and check them out. Even if you don't listen to my commentary about it, I think it's very worthwhile to hear from these political leaders throughout history from their own mouths. If you like that kind of thing and there's a specific type of leader you want to look at, I will gladly pull videos that I find inspiring, influential, noteworthy for future episodes when there's not as huge current event weeks. So with that being said, if you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, the bell button for notifications for when we go live. You can support the show for as little as $5 a month. Now we have 2 patrons. I am grateful for those patrons. We can get that up to 10 patrons. I would be very, very happy if we can get that up to 10 patrons for as little as $5 a month. That will help me pay for see, I don't make any money. I lose a lot of money doing this, actually. Allow me to pay for the labor and efforts going into the graphics of this show, put more content out there, and develop the show even further. So $5 a month, you can help us on Patreon, patreon.com/Greater Society Media. I am finalizing the first draft of my book, so you should be keeping an eye out as I keep updating these things. That will eventually be coming out, and for patrons, this will be an exclusive down the line. Patrons will get early access to audiobook versions of that when I finish it. So that way I don't know if I'll voice it or I'll have someone else do it. The reading of it, I'll probably have someone else read it because they're probably better at reading than me. But that is something to look forward to as a patron. And if you are really looking to help us, that's the way to do it. You can listen to the show on Apple or Spotify, the audio version only. And you can follow the show on Instagram, TikTok. That is a new platform for us. And Facebook, Greater Society Media, on all three of them. You could follow me at Con O'Hanlon on Twitter. With all of that being said, thank you again for watching. I love to hear suggestions from you, so you can email greatersocietymedia@gmail.com for any suggestions. And I will start a Discord this week, so for next week I will have the link ready to go. If there's features you want to see in it, definitely hit the email up. And again, guest suggestions are always welcome. Send them to the email greatersocietymedia@gmail.com. I will gladly reach out. And if you have contact information for people, that would be even better, because there are plenty of people that I would love to have on that I just cannot get a hold of. So with all of that, thank you so much. I hope you all enjoy a peaceful, fun, relaxing Labor Day weekend. Enjoy as the summer turns to fall. Get a pumpkin spice latte. Enjoy it. Be basic. Tag me in your posts with your pumpkin spice latte. I would love that. And until next week, everyone, stay safe. Peace.